Montreal, the everyday, and the extraordinary. The Elias Macco Show on CJAD 800.
All right, everybody. Second hour of the Elias Macco Show. We have so much to get to. The show is just action-packed. I just want to highlight one thing. In just about 10 minutes' time, we're going to be continuing our Olympic week. All week long, we've been looking back at the 1976 Montreal Olympics. We spoke to Dick Pound on Monday. We had Michel Vaillancourt on the program as well this week. He won silver. He won a silver medal at the 76 Games. We didn't win a gold. Canada did not win a gold at the 76 Games. One of the 6 silver medalists. Michelle joined us as well on the program. Yesterday, Dino Bumbaru from Heritage Montreal was on the program, and we looked at all of the infrastructure, not just the Olympic Stadium, right? But the Biodome and the Olympic Village, the Athletes Village, all of the things that we still use to this day in the city thanks to the 76 Olympics. It was tremendous. So we'll continue our Olympic week coming up in just about 10 minutes time. Now, I just want to get to this. Have you ever bitten your tongue? And when I say, everyone bites their tongue, right? It happens. You're eating a meal, you eat something, you bite your tongue. I tell you what, on Monday, I was at the St. Mary's Masters, this wonderful golf tournament that's done to raise funds for St. Mary's Hospital. I was invited by the chair of the tournament, George Alexopoulos, and we had a great time. I spent a lot of time on the golf course at Royal Montreal, and I've never played at such a fancy course, so it was a lot of fun for me, even though I'm not necessarily a golfer, as they say. But we end up, on many holes, they had a little station where you could have a little bite. A nosh is what I'd normally call it, but the Quebec government says, no, you can't say that. So they had these burgers, these sliders. And I get a burger. I'm hungry. I'm parched. I'm hungry. I've been playing golf for hours and hours. So I grab one of these sliders, and I'm so famished, I bite right into it. And I've never bitten my tongue harder than I did in that moment. But I'm with like big shot doctors, David Chan, ENT from St. Mary's Hospital, and I'm with Billy Kyriakopoulos from Air Canada, all these guys and the other foursomes that are along with us. And I'm like, so I bit my tongue so hard. All I wanted to do was start crying. It was like I was in so much pain, but I had to hide it. And I was just like, oh my God, I'm in the most pain I've ever been. And lo and behold, we're 3 days later. My tongue still hurts. I basically, it's still bruised. So if you've ever bit your tongue like that, have a thought for me this morning, because my tongue is still in pain 3 days after biting it on the golf course on Monday. Last night, I got up to some other stuff that I do want to spend some time here telling you about. The country, the United States, they're located about 35 minutes south of Montreal. I know you listen to some leaders, and it seems like they're on another planet now, but they're actually our closest friends and our neighbors, the United States of America. They're having a big anniversary this year, 250 years of the United States. And the Montreal consulate put on a shindig yesterday at the Theatre St. James, and I was one of the lucky people to be invited to that. Lo and behold, who shows up to this affair? None other than Ambassador Pete Hoekstra. So that was a surprise. He was there along with his wife Diane. I show up for the event. It was funny because it's very hard to find U.S. alcohol in this province right now. Of course, the SAQ hasn't been selling U.S. booze for quite some time, like most of the liquor commissions across this country. Well, let me tell you something. At the bars that they had at Theatre St. James yesterday, they had all the American liquors. I don't know if that was to make a point or not, but they definitely had U.S. liquor available for people who were there. I do want to spend a moment here to give thanks to Robert P. Sanders, who is the Consul General for the United States here in Montreal. He's ending his tour of duty this month. His 3 years in Montreal already up. So that was another big thing that was discussed yesterday. And, I'll say this, both the ambassador and the Consul General spoke at the event yesterday. And Pete Hoekstra, he's been on this show, and when he came on this show, boy, did I hear it from you. And then that video went on to YouTube. If you missed our interview with the ambassador earlier this year, I think it's still very valuable to watch the interview even months later. when he was speaking to the audience, you know, he did have a joke or two. He was talking about 250 years ago, how the Quebec could have decided to join the Union. And he ribbed the audience over those discussions that Benjamin Franklin had with people in Quebec 250 years ago this year about joining the U.S. But he had a lot of laudatory things to say. I mean, he started off, and you know, there's been an arrest this morning in Toronto for the police officer that was shot. Apparently, the police officer was going after one of the people involved in a shooting at the U.S. consulate in Toronto. And lo and behold, you know, he shows up on stage. The first thing he says, he talks about law enforcement. He talks about RCMP. He talks about the people in law enforcement and the police officer that lost his life. This morning, we're finding out there's been an arrest made, by the way. The person apparently responsible, allegedly responsible for the shooting of a police officer has been arrested this morning. But the ambassador did mention that. So it was, you know, listen, for everything we've said about Pete Hoekstra, because boy, can he ever say what he really feels about Canada right now? And I know sometimes it goes over like a lead balloon when he speaks about Canada. He was there last night, and he did pay a visit to the people here in Montreal. After I got out of Theatre St. James, so we finished, wrapped up there. I tried to leave a little bit early before the event ended because I needed to get to a wonderful event that was being put on by our good friend Beryl Wiseman and the Institute for Public Affairs of Montreal. And the event last night, and you know, I sort of didn't realize this because I was like, okay, I'm going to be along with some really good people. I was given the lineup of who was going to be there. CAQ Minister Benoit Charette, he's now the transport minister. Denis Coderre was there, and the Institute for Public Affairs of Montreal, and I didn't realize this, they were giving out awards, Allies Against Anti-Semitism. And, you know, listen, I view my role here at CJAD pretty simple. I'm a radio broadcaster. I want to advocate for what I feel is right and just. And I've been doing that over the last, 8 years here on the station. And Beryl says, hey, come to this event. And I sort of it didn't click to me that I'd be one of these people being recognized at the affair. And it was a really it was an honor and a really great event. And what was amazing is how many people that were honored last night at the same event that have been on this show. Denis Coderre was honored at the event. He was there. Joel de Bellefeuille, Red Coalition, he was there. We were sitting next to each other. Leslie Roberts, these are all people that have been on this show before and getting recognition. Mandana Javan, who's been such an advocate in the Iranian community and fighting for Western civilization. She was honored. I could go on, but those are the names that have been on this show before. Anyways, it was a lovely event, and almost a full house showing up to honor the people on the stage here. So shout out to Beryl and the Institute for Public Affairs of Montreal. Quite the showing against anti-Semitism and for all of the values that we hold near and dear to our hearts. All right, when we return on the Elias Macko Show, you're going to get to hear Aislin, Terry Mosher. This year he released a book about the 1976 Olympics, and we think it's perfect for our Olympic week. Let's do
Unmistakably Canadian.
It's the music that raised you.
The artists raising the bar.
Hi, this is Brian Adams.
Hey, my name's Brett Emmons. I'm from the Glorious Sons.
Hi, I'm Nelly Furtado.
Made in Canada. The station that champions Canadian music.
Loud, proud, and all yours.
No passports required. Just press play.
Tap into Made in Canada now on iHeartRadio.ca
or the free iHeartRadio app.
Stories impacting Montrealers. News impacting Montreal. The Elias Macko Show. News Talk Radio. CJAD 800.
The Montreal 1976 Olympics original soundtrack is what you're hearing right there. Victor Vogel with Homage to the Athletes. Welcome back to the Elias Macko Show. All week long, we've been celebrating the 76 Olympics that happened in this city. And this year, Terry Mosher, a.k.a. Aislin, you know him and love him as the cartoonist from the Montreal Gazette, he literally released the book on the 76 Olympics. We spoke to him when the book came out, and we figured it would be perfect for our Olympics week. In case you missed it the first time, here it is. Terry, thanks for coming on.
Yes, my pleasure.
The book called Aislin's 1976 Montreal Olympics Scrapbook, Jean Drapeau's Baby. And I got to say, Aislin, Terry, you know, that subheadline there, Jean Drapeau's Baby. It's the perfect thing for this book, because the one thing I kept saying is like, this is almost the story of Drapeau as another way of looking at this book.
Well, it is, and you know, there was an English biography on him, but I discovered there wasn't any great French biography on him. And even that one was written in 1980, so it didn't cover a lot of the post-Olympic stuff that went on in terms of the controversy and this, that, and the other. So I sort of turned it into a salute, but also a thumbing of the nose at Jean Drapeau, who, there's no question about it, he was our greatest ever mayor. Do you know there's only one statue to one mayor of Montreal in all of Montreal? And it's of Jean Drapeau. I took a photo of him outside of City Hall, watching the comings and goings. It's just a terrific statue.
If you could you describe to especially to our younger audience, why Jean Drapeau was perfect for your line of work when it comes to cartoons?
Well, for one thing, it was very easy to draw. It was like drawing an egg, and then you put glasses on the egg, and then a scraggly little mustache, and you had a caricature of Jean Drapeau. But we all loved him. And remember, too, it was the heyday of political cartooning in Montreal. From 67 through 76 in the Olympics, he had 8 cartoonists watching him every day. And so It was a wealth of material. It's not only my stuff in there, Elias. It's cartoons by a whole bunch of other people who were cartooning at the time, and their comments on them. And we loved him. We didn't hate him, but he was surely an ambitious guy, so he was easy to cartoon in terms of the policy he had. But we loved him just as what a mischievous guy he was.
Well, I wanted to get into the research that was involved here because, you know, and for our listeners that haven't seen the book, this is not like you open up the book and it's just page after of cartoon and then another cartoon and then another cartoon. There's the archival photos that, like you mentioned, not just your work, your fellow cartoonists from the time. How much work was involved?
8 months of very solid work. And I had the idea for a couple of years. I knew how this evolved was I knew it was coming up, the 50th anniversary of the Olympics. And I knew a lot of people would be interested in the book, particularly older readers. And everybody you talk to, even as children, they have memories of the Olympics or about their grandfather. You know, buy this book for your grandfather if you're 25 or something. And it's really, truly... it was a memorable occasion on so many different levels in Montreal. So I began to discover that originally it was just going to be a collection of the sketches that I did during the Olympics because I was all over the place for the Gazette. But then I began to go sort of backwards and forwards, saying, wait a minute, I should be mentioning this. I should be mentioning when he was first elected as mayor, how he couldn't do any wrong in the 1960s. I mean, he was elected. He put in a subway. He put in Place des Arts. He created downtown, in effect, that created the underground city as a result. And then the crowning achievement, Expo 67, and then brought the Expos in. He couldn't do any wrong. He began to trip up with the Olympics.
So let's get into that, right? Like, when did you start to say to yourself, things aren't going well, and the guy that could do no wrong is starting to do things that were going wrong?
Almost right away, when it was announced in 1970 that we were getting the Olympics, and of course the whole town celebrated. But I was a little dubious about it, was one thing and another. Then we had the October crisis and a couple of other things like that kind of got in the way. They didn't stop Jean Drapeau, but there were sort of warning signals and like, what kind of pollution was this going to create? And how much was, originally he said it was going to cost $2 million or something.
Jeez.
And, that began to escalate, and he began to sort of cover up on that. And then the corruption that went on was unbelievable. A lot of rich people in Drummond were getting contracts to build parts of the stadium. The contracts were falling apart. The unions were in terrible shape. They threw some of the union leaders. So leading up to the actual Olympics, there was scandal after scandal after scandal. And of course, I was drawing cartoons on that. But let's be fair, the Olympics themselves were a marvelous event. And I think I show that in my sketches, the celebratory sketches of the different athletes taking part in that sort of thing.
And that's why there's so many various phases of the book, right? And then you get to the celebration of 76 and pulling it off. But I want to push forward to chapter 5, which you aptly title The Hangover. And I guess that's when we start to say, what have we done? Talk to me about your work during the hangover period.
Well, here's the thing. Shortly after, it was a phenomenal year when you think about it, because shortly after the Olympics were over, the Parti Québécois was elected with René Lévesque. And so the responsibility for covering this huge Olympic cost shifted to the Parti Québécois, and they weren't too happy about that because they hadn't. In any case, they created this inquiry. There was huge news at the time, and it was a look at what had happened. And they came out solidly a few years later, criticizing Jean Drapeau, and he refused to answer it. So that created tons of cartoons. CJAD and La Presse almost ran a daily front-page cartoon asking him, "Where's your response to the Malouf inquiry, Monsieur Maire?" And so we had a heyday with that stuff. And, he was an arrogant guy, had always had his own way, and then suddenly had become very, very defensive. So that's all in the book. But let me tell you, Elias, it comes right up to the present day because the controversy about the Olympic Stadium continues. Yep. It's going to cost, another $1 billion to fix that damn thing?
We're doing it right now. We certainly are.
Yeah. And so it just continues. The saga continues. So I have contemporary cartoons by other cartoonists on their take, and this is, I think, a very funny part of the book. I don't know if you got that part.
I did, and
how cartoonists, it's almost become a meme, how cartoonists suggest what to do with the stadium, everything from blow it up to turn it into a daycare center. That's a hilarious section of the book, really.
It's funny because, when you talked about how it was easy to draw Jean Drapeau, and that's one of the reasons why he was such good fodder for you and your colleagues at the time. Also look at Olympic Stadium in the same way, right? It is an iconic structure. It must be fun to draw, which is part of the fun of doing cartoons on it.
It is, and it's become this sort of dinosaur monster in a lot of people's minds about just sucking up money, and it never became the center it was supposed to become down there.
Do you have a thought or two on whether or not, based on everything you've covered over the years, if Montreal should try it again, should we try and host an Olympics, a winter or a summer, one more time?
Well, we can't even afford to host the World Cup. How can we possibly afford to, Mayor Plante backed off on that one. I think the current mayor has sort of made polite noises about possibly Olympics, but we can't afford it. We just can't afford it. We're the most heavily taxed community in all of North America, and a lot of it has to do with the Olympic Stadium. Anyway, it's a wonderfully complicated place in Montreal. I'm very proud of this book, by the way.
Well, you should be. Aislin, listen, to wrap up here, I'm going to tell everyone, this book is a triumph. The way you put that era together, not just Olympics, but what came before and after, it's a great way to understand this city. Even if I'm a little bit too young to have gone through the Olympics. I wasn't alive when the Olympics happened. But you understand this city so well after engrossing yourself in your book. So I tell you, you've done some great work.
It's odd. I'm the longest working political cartoonist in North America now. I've been around a long time.
Wow.
And also, it's just so much of Montreal. So a few years ago, I began doing it. I did the 50th anniversary of the 1972 Canada Hockey Rush Series.
Yeah.
And then I did the anniversary of the Expos. And so I seem to be turning into this mini pop historian, if you will, about things I remember, particularly in cartoons.
And I think we all know that these cartoons, they're just a perfect way of looking back at how people were reacting to news stories when they actually happened, right?
Yes, well, it's very much a populist art form. You're not drawing to please the politicians. You're drawing cartoons to sort of voice what popular opinions are about it. And that means that we get away with thumbing at our noses at a lot of these people.
Yeah. That's our interview with Terry Mosher from earlier year on the 76 Olympics. Olympics Weeks continues on this show tomorrow. When we return, in transit, Melanie Joly trying to sway Chinese EV makers. We'll tackle that.
Hello, Canada.
This is Bryan Adams Radio. Hosted by Bryan Adams himself.
We'll play a few of mine, a ton of my favorites, and some must-hear behind-the-scenes stories from the world of rock and roll. I'm coming to get you! One thing about doing rock and roll so long is you end up meeting a lot of the people that you admire. Sometimes you even get to work with them. It's only love, and that's all.
Bryan Adams Radio.
I'm coming back to you.
Now available on the free iHeartRadio app.
Hey everybody, how are you tonight? Sounds great.
The Elias Macco Show, on demand.
On demand. Don't miss a thing.
Find your favorite clips at CJAD800.com and on the free iHeartRadio app.
Industry Minister Melanie Joly is in China meeting with automakers there. We'll tell you why next.
Your mom told you not to talk back. But we feel very differently. In fact,
we want you to talk back and record your comment via the CJAD 800 page on the iHeartRadio app.
another way to have your say on the voice of the community.
News Talk Radio, CJAD 800.
Close your eyes and you can hear the entire world come alive. 2026 FIFA World Cup is on, and you can stream it all live on TSN Radio. From the opening kickoff to the final celebration, every match, every moment. Listen to FIFA World Cup on TSN Radio.
Gives Canada the liftoff.
Available on iHeartRadio. Debate, interviews, and breaking news. The Elias Macco Show. News Talk Radio, CJAD 800.
All right, let's talk politics. We're going to get to the incredible polling situation we're seeing right now in Quebec. But first, we have news from just the last few minutes on the Quebec political front involving Charles Milliard and Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon. Now, if you will recall, the Liberals sent a formal notice to Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon on Sunday. They gave him 72 hours to retract his comments linking the Quebec Liberal Party to organized crime and to issue a formal apology. Now, the PQ leader, Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon, said thanks, but no thanks. And now that 72-hour deadline has passed, we now have a comment from Charles Milliard releasing this on X and other social media platforms. He writes this: the 72-hour deadline we demanded for him to retract his statement has now passed. I sincerely believed he would. That said, the deadline was his. We're not bound by it. Consequently, the PLQ, the Liberal Party, reserves all its rights, including the right to take legal action. Discussions in this regard are ongoing, but at present, I don't know if it seems like any legal action will actually happen. If this is a game of chicken, right now, Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon not seemingly willing to play along, and Charles Milliard is pressing pause on making this a bigger story for now. So we're keeping track of that situation. Now, the polling out this week shows we've got a 3-horse race. Maybe we've got a 4-horse race, depending on how you look at it. Let's head over to Sebastien Dallaire, Executive Vice President of Eastern Canada for Leger. Sebastien, welcome back to the program.
Hi, nice to be here.
How are you viewing these polls, the Quebec polling here right now? How do you view it?
Well, what we're seeing is we still have more than half of voters who are saying, I'm not entirely sure who I'm going to vote for in the end. And that's unusually high for a period where, we know when the election is going to be. It's only a few months away now. They've had time to think about it. And that's unusually high, and it speaks to the fact that voters are still shopping around. They're still looking at their options. It's a very unique situation where most of the leaders are new, some of them almost brand new, and the choices that will be coming up in the fall will be quite stark. And you add to this a geopolitical context that has Quebecers very worried about not just their personal future, but the future of the province. It's all of this together makes for a very volatile political environment.
Now, the CAQ, when François Legault was still leader at the end of his days, boy, it was not looking good. Fair to say that, I don't know if it's François Legault leaving or Christine Frechette becoming the leader. I don't know how you'd put it, but is it fair to say that their fortunes have changed?
They have, but what we're seeing in the numbers, and that's where there's a bit of a warning sign for Christine Frechette, is that she is carrying the novelty on her back at this stage. She's outperforming the party. She's really, outperforming every metric about people's desire for change and who represents change. And it's really her personally that is changing the discussion for the CAQ. But what we've seen in recent days with the report on, what was happening in government investments in the battery sector, the report from La Vérificatrice Générale really left a mark. We see that, all of a sudden, the climbing has stopped in terms of voting intentions, but also satisfaction with the government after a very visible improvement over the past couple of months has now stalled, and not only stalled, but it started going back down again. So it's difficult when you have 7 years of baggage that you carry with you. It's difficult to be the only person representing change within a party, and that's going to be the challenge for Christine Frechette. And for Charles Milliard, what it tells him and it tells the Liberals is you have a lot of ground for growth, but you need to be more visible, you need to be out there, because right now there's a bit of plateauing for the Liberals. We see a little bit of plateauing for the CAQ, so our voting intentions haven't moved much since last month.
It's interesting what you just said there, because honestly, I was going to ask you about if there's plateauing for the PQ, because it seems like they've been stuck in neutral for the last little while. You'd think, hey, if you want to run away with an election, you need to get into 35%, 40% territory, seemingly not happening. What would you say for Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon's squad?
Yeah, and you're right. Right now there is plateauing. Like they've reached higher points in the past, but when we look at over the past 2 years or so, where they stand is where they've tended to be around 30 to 32, 33%. As long as they don't go lower for them, there's no reason to press the panic button. But it is clear that it's telling them that they don't have momentum right now. Like they're not going up. And with both the Liberals and the CAQ having slowed their momentum as well, the door is open for everybody. So it's really, this race is up for grabs with the PQ remaining in the lead, but it's far from what it was a few months ago.
And regionally, in the Quebec City region, it seems like Éric Duhem and the Conservatives are faring quite well, but will it translate this time around into seats? What's your take on the Quebec City region?
It's quite possible that in the Quebec City region they could manage to steal a few seats at this point. We see they remain very competitive. The bigger challenge for the Conservatives is when we look at how the various leaders are perceived. We've seen over time that Éric Duhem has a lot of improvement to make with voters outside of those the Quebec City region, where he is stronger both personally and the party is also stronger. But outside of this, for Éric Duhem, he needs to improve his image. He needs to show that he does have what it takes to become prime minister. That's going to be his challenge if he wants to get out of the Quebec City region.
Must be exciting time for pollsters and especially for us in the media as well. Sebastien, thanks so much for coming on this morning.
Always a pleasure. Thank you.
Sebastien Dallaire, Executive Vice President of Eastern Canada for Leger. When we return on the Elias Mackos Show, Tim Cook, still CEO of Apple, made some comments to the Wall Street Journal yesterday. It will mean big impacts for everyone that buys an iPhone. I'll tell you what those impacts are coming up next. Plus, Google putting pressure on Quebec all over hydroelectricity. We'll tackle that and more next.
Canadian women are looking for more out of themselves, their businesses, their elected leaders, and the world around them.
And that's why we're thrilled to introduce the Honest Talk podcast.
I'm Jennifer Stewart.
And I'm Catherine Clark. And in this podcast, we interview Canada's most inspiring women.
Entrepreneurs, artists, athletes, politicians, and newsmakers, all at different stages of their journey.
So if you're looking to connect, then we hope you'll join us.
Listen to the Honest Talk podcast on iHeartRadio or wherever you listen to your podcasts.